Welcome to the Golden Valley Light Railway video platform. This is a repair and restoration series video. An engine for Lister 3742. Here is the 1931 Lister Rail Truck 3742 that we have at the GVLR. It is sitting here on brand sidings after some restoration, at some point in what I believe to be the late 2000s, as it is known not to have arrived on site until 2005. If you look closely, you will notice it is far from complete. The starting handle shaft, the gearbox, the clutch, the engine and the engine side covers are all missing. Lister Rail Truck 3742 had been in storage since its purchase in December 1993, before its arrival at the GVLR as seen in this series of photos upon brand sidings again. It is in a little more complete condition with only the gearbox and final drive missing. I do not have a date for these images, that are from the collection of one of our volunteers. Could they have been taken upon the day of its arrival at the GVLR? It is interesting to see the hopper wagon in the background of this image, but that does not help with dating like I thought it might. It had arrived at the GVLR in late December 1994, when 3742 was known to be in storage. We have a complete video all about that wagon. I will put a link to it in the description. If you have not already seen it, feel free to take a look. The GVLR produces a stockbook publication, available for purchase on site or via our website. There is a promo series video all about it. I will put a link to it in the description. If you were to take a look at the stockbook, you would find an entry within it about Lister 3742 with the exact picture I started this video with, and that I used to make the images for the introduction. Studying the text that accompanies the photo, you will see it says restoration to a working loco is still in progress. A suitable replacement Jap petrol engine has been sourced after the original was deemed beyond repair. This is where I pick up the story and this video gets its name. Before we move on to look at engines, I will give you an introduction to the Lister Rail Truck. R.A. Lister & Co. Limited of Dursley in Gloucestershire started making an auto truck in 1926. It is shown in this 1928 advertisement along with its sibling the rail truck, which began manufacture that year. I have taken the advert, with permission, from a post by Jennifer Houghton from the Lister Locomotive Facebook group. I have made the enlargement so you can see better the rail truck. Of note are the engine side panels. I went digging in the storage areas at the GVLR and found this side panel from Lister 3742. It is of the early type with holes rather than louvers. Here is a good example of the later style of engine covers, found on auto trucks and rail trucks. This splendid 1946 ex-military example belongs to Ryan Wright of the Lister Auto Truck Owners and Fans Facebook group, displayed here with his permission. It has the later Mark III type of engine. My internet searches and Facebook group conversations led me to the Abbey pumping station at Leicester in the United Kingdom. I visited the fine Victorian building in May 2025 and found tucked away in a backroom workshop a rail truck. I took plenty of photos and have made this compilation to display it here. Although it was hard to photograph in its cramped location, it was identifiable as an early one with holes rather than louvers in the engine covers, but the engine had a removable head and the later style of carburetor, unlike ours. This example of an early Lister rail truck dates from 1935 and is numbered 6299. It too has the early side covers but the later Mark III engine. This photo reproduced here of it was taken by Joshua Brinsford, a member of the Lister Locomotive Facebook group, at the Weston's Oil and Pumping Station Museum in Somerset, United Kingdom. One of the next examples I found on the internet is this one at the De Corville Spoorweg Museum in the Netherlands. It is number 873 from 1928 and is said to be the oldest surviving example of a Lister rail truck. I have been chatting with Arnaud Bongards, who is from the museum, and he is intrigued, as I am, that our engine may be earlier than the one fitted to their example. It has a removable cylinder head and a much later magneto arrangement, although the carburetor is similar to ours, as seen here. I also found via the Lister Locomotive Facebook group a link to an archive database from the very early days of the Internet. This list was compiled in the late 1970s by a member of the Industrial Railway Society or Narrow Gauge Railway Society. The information was obtained by looking through Lister's index card system. Sadly, the index cards were lost following a fire at the works in the 1980s. In this composite image I have scrolled down to highlight the entry for 3742. The main contractor C.P. Hunter bought 3742 to work upon the Portsmouth Municipal Airport project. Its construction necessitated extensive demolition, flattening and reclamation works to remove and infill the east bastion of the Hill-Sea Lines, an 18th-century fortification for the protection of the naval dockyards at Portsmouth. The airport opened in 1932 with 3 runways. I have marked them on this 1907 map, reproduced here with the consent of the National Library of Scotland, so you can see how they interfered with the fortifications. The demolition of the fortifications was obviously a big thing in 1931, so much so that an Act of Parliament had to be passed to allow Portsmouth Corporation to do it. It was even made into a British Pathy news reel. I have been granted permission to show stills from it here. If you would like to watch it, I have put a link to it in the description to this video. The fortifications were blown up with explosives. Very interestingly, I wonder if that is a Lister locomotive canopy in the background of this still, showing the engineers rigging the explosives. What do you think? The extent of the land works can be seen in these aerial photos, reproduced with the consent of the website ukairfieldguide.net, where I found them. They also kindly provided the runway overlay I put on the map earlier. On this second photo, do you think this might be a rake of skips? And what about this? Do you think it could be a loco? Let us know in the comments what you think. I have put a link in the description to the page on the Airfield Guide so you can see all the information. With regard to the subject of this video, an engine for Lister 3742, and bearing all of the history in mind, I formed the opinion that the only way to progress the restoration was to go original, or as near to original as possible. The petrol engines fitted to Lister rail trucks, from 1928 up until they went diesel in 1956, were built by J.A. Prestwick of London, commonly known as Jap engines. Initially all were of 600 cubic centimeters and were single-cylinder of a side valve design. From around 1935 they went to the SS3 or Mark III design, that had a removable cylinder head and improved performance plus reliability. A 750 cubic centimeters V-twin variant became available later on. Tucked away in storage at the GVLR, there was the stripped-down engine that was in the loco in the photos, from back around 2005. With it were the parts of another engine, and a third that was mostly together. I did some cleaning and found the engine numbers, then with some help from the Jap Engine group on Facebook, I was able to date each of the engines we had. Using this enlargement I was able to pick out all of the component parts of this, the original engine. For instance, there was only one head and barrel with the spark plug pointing backwards, and the lack of an oil union on the front ruled out the other bottom end. This was good, as it was the engine that dated to 1930, logical for a rail truck delivered in February 1931. The original engine had been looked at and thought to be beyond economic repair. This is why the other two engines had been sourced. In this compilation image you can see the head and barrel on the bench in my workshop, the broken valve evident in the first picture, and in the second photo, you can see I have managed to get the broken valve out. What a job that was, as it was slightly bent. Upon further stripping of what we presume to be the original engine, the 1930, it was found that the tappet guide for the front cylinder was in very poor condition. Perhaps part of the reason the valve had broken? In the second picture I am starting to strip the 1934 engine. Although essentially the same as the original engine, the head is different, with the spark plug pointing up, being fitted to the rear valve access cover. I fetched the large spanner from the GVLR running shed to gain access to the valves. With the tappet guides removed, it was evident that they were serviceable and could be used on the original engine to replace the worn and corroded ones. I also noticed another difference in the head and barrel casting. The 1934 has a boss between the valves that is threaded and tapped, with a stud and nut, to carry a valve gear cover. This is the third engine we had, the SS3 or Mark III engine from 1936 or 56, most probably 56. It has a hole in the crank cases, so as it is not any good. I learnt from the Jap Engine Facebook group, and confirmed with measurements, that apart from the revised collet retention system, that the valves in Mark III engines were exactly the same as the 1930 engine, so it was plundered. This meant that I would have enough parts to make a good combined head and barrel with functioning valves for the original engine. The next problem to overcome was the state of the magneto that provides the spark to make the engine run. As can be seen in the enlargement, it had been sitting with its cover missing. When I examined it more closely, it was full of sand. There was no hope of a spark from that. It would barely turn. After a little searching upon eBay, I was able to find a spares or repairs magneto, for a bargain price, of the same general type that had a good cover that we were missing. I quickly got it purchased and with parts from both, managed to make up one good magneto. Here is a short clip of it being tested upon my bench. Can you see it sparking? And then, just in case you missed it, here it is slowed down and zoomed in. The next problem was the carburetor. The original was damaged with internal parts missing. I was, however, very fortunate to find one on Facebook Marketplace for only £10. The only problem was that he would not post it, and it was in Malvern, Worcestershire, in the UK. I had a day trip out with my wife, and fetched it as it was too good to miss. I spent some time cleaning it up and got it fitted to the engine. The next thing I had to tackle was the oil pump. I cleaned it up and polished its casing, then tested it with my electric drill. It worked. The problem we had was that the drive thimble that connected it was missing. I asked upon the Jap Engine Facebook group and was advised that Speedway Services in Kings Lynn, Norfolk, United Kingdom, remanufactured them. I went out on another day trip with my wife and purchased the drive nut thimble, plus a new chain and sprockets for the magneto. These were duly fitted. We were now close to a trial run. It had always been my desire to bench run this engine, just to prove to myself that it was a viable proposition before I set about a full strip and rebuild restoration of it. To enable this, I had to make an engine stand. Here it is, clamped to my bench with the engine fitted ready to try. And here we go. But actually this is after the event. I am just pulling it over here with the plug out. I had found the compression is more than you can really pull through, massively jarring my shoulder as it stalled the pull on compression. But then when it fired, before the rope was fully out, it flicked it off the pulley and smacked me in the face, drawing blood on my cheek. I didn't learn. The second time it did it, I decided to quit before it was too late. I wish I had had the camera rolling for that. I don't like giving up, but if I devise a better way of trying a start, I will post a YouTube short of it running, but for now I will end this video here. That concludes this video about an engine for Lister 3742. Thanks for watching this repair and restoration series video from the Golden Valley Light Railway. If you enjoyed it, please acknowledge this by clicking on the thumbs up button under the video player. It will help our channel grow. Please leave us a comment or ask a question. What else would you like to see a video on?